Welcome to the Zapped to the Past Awards for 1985.
Hello and welcome to Zapped to the Past. This is a special episode that fits in between 1985 and 1986. This is the episode where we're going to look at all the games that came out in this year and have our awards ceremony. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. We've got a lot of awards to give, from best game to worst game to best crapvert, which seems an oxymoron, but hey ho, we're going to do it anyway. And that's what this episode is all about. So it's a little bit different. We're not going to be doing loads of new game reviews because we're starting 1986, I think, probably next week or whenever the next one comes out. And so we'll be carrying on with game reviews then. But in this episode, we're going to look at, all the stuff that came out in 1985 and say what were our favourites, what were the worst things, or what are the things that made us go, and anything along those lines, basically. Best films as well, probably, and I think there's a surprise entry for best music, but we'll wait and see what that comes from that. So that's the plan for this. It's a little bit different, as I said. So Graham, this is all about 1985 and what we've done, 8 months. We've done 8 months worth of coverage. We've had 8 issues of Zzap with games to look forward to and look through. We've looked at approximately around about 160 to 170 games. I haven't counted exactly, but I know it's around about there, which is quite a lot. There's been some very good games. There's been some very bad games. There's been a lot of middling games, and it's been a strange year. Graham, what have you made of it? What have you found from going back to look at this lot? 35 years later.
It's been kind of the yin and the yang, hasn't it? But it's been interesting to see how games have developed. It's been interesting to see how graphics have developed. In fact, it's been interesting to see because I got my Commodore 64 probably around this time. It was around Christmas 1985, so around about now. I'd played on them, obviously, and I had friends who had them. I didn't own my own until sort of that Christmas. It was kind of a Christmas present. So it was nice to look back and sort of see, because it's easy we've got access to all of these games now, and we kind of take that for granted. But back then, these games were, you had to go out physically to shops. There's no online, obviously, or anything like that. So you had to go and buy them. It was hard to choose from these games. So you had to make decisions based, God help us, on the crapverts and on the tape cases that were on the shelves. And so it's been nice to go back and sort of have access to the games that kind of completely missed me, and to see what they were like. The downside to that is, of course, that a significant proportion of them have been awful. So it's been there's two things I like to think about. One is the games that I'm going back to that have really surprised me and that have been a lot better than I remembered them, or better that I'd never seen them before and they were really good, compared to the ones that I knew were already, that I'd played and that I'd always had a soft spot for, to see if they were still good. Bear in mind, I haven't really played a lot of Commodore 64 games in in a long time. Every now and again I'll play them, but this is the first time where I've sat and concentrated to play as many games as I probably did back when I was a teenager. So it's nice to see the contrast. My feeling is that it's a year of significant UK development. We're seeing I think we're seeing the legacy of the kind of the US batch of games that came out sort of slowly being, thankfully and mercifully in some instances, being phased out, but still being released annoyingly. But we're starting to see the UK developers really starting to take hold of the Commodore 64. Not just UK, I suppose, but the developers of the Commodore 64 is really starting to get hold of the machine, and little gems of game design and game development are slipping out now on a more regular basis at the end of this 8-month period. I think that's noted in Zzap. Even Zzap's gone through quite a few changes in that time as well, from its first issue to where we are now. The format's settled down a bit, and they've got some really the reviewers have settled into the pace and everything else. It's been fascinating, I have to say. I can't believe it actually is about 160 games. It's insane, isn't it, that we have access and have played that many games. I mean, if you sat down to play 160 Xbox games, you'd be old and bearded before you ever finished any of those, or I would be. I'd
more older and more bearded.
Yeah, true, yeah. Well, it takes so long to get through these games that I've learned a lesson about the instant gratification that came with these games and how they programmed that in because of the limitations of the machine. And if they could take away anything from this initial phase, it's that when they get that formula right, it works really well. And some games just do, as we'll find out with these awards. When they get it wrong, it's spectacularly wrong. And often, I think there's a little bit, and I noticed this when I was teaching video game design way back, and I know you probably do this, still get it to this day, is that sometimes their ambitions exceed their abilities when they do these things. And so what seemed like a great idea on paper, and there are certain games we know that this applies to, when it seems like a good idea, when it comes down to actually being able to put this thing out, doesn't work out so well. And they either hit limitations of the Commodore 64, and later they become something that people work to get past, and they find ways around them and all sorts of fancy tricks. But at this stage, they're not there yet. So there's still games being released in BASIC, for goodness sake. So it's been interesting. I mean, the 80s is a crazy time. It's such an escalation of everything. It's a breakneck speed in many instances, and yet this is a world without proper satellite TV for everybody, without mobile phones, without the internet, without any of those things. So this is a big home technology we're talking about. It sounds really silly when you say it now, because you can play as many games as you like on your iPhone or your Android phone, but back then it was an investment, and and games were purchased when you had the pocket money or money on birthdays and Christmases to go and get them, or gifts from your auntie, which was bound to be Cops and Robbers, which by the way, make sure you never play it properly.
Yeah, don't play that.
What about you?
My take. I think I obviously had a C64 a bit earlier than you. I think we got ours sometime in '84. It's hard to sort of remember sort of thing, but I just remember when I got my colour TV. So it's kind of there's trying to sort of piece those Christmases into when you got this, when you got that, and it was my brother that bought it. God bless him. And with Mr. Wimpy and Hunchback, I think I've mentioned somewhere on the show, probably in episode 0. And so the games we had we would pick them up mostly from the local newsagents. They would be, I think I remember the very first budget title we bought was an Imagine title called Pedro, which even at the time was god awful. It was terrible. It was an awful game, and even then, back then, you kind of knew you'd bought a dud. And it's easy to. And one of the things that's kind of occurred to me as we've been doing this sort of thing. It is easy to look at these games and sort of to rag on them quite easily, sort of thing, because they are we're only, if you think, we're only sort of 13 years out from Pong. The steps that have been made forward in a lot of ways, sort of thing, are quite incredible to where to get to this point where we are. And so if we look 35 years later where we are now with with games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla and stuff like that, where you've got entire worlds being rendered at incredible detail, it's easy to sort of forget where we started. The one thing I would say in respect to that sort of thing, and one of the sort of, maybe we've not sort of been a bit clear about this, and maybe we should have been, was that we always look at these as that these games were still asking for your money, and I think that's something that's important. And you look back on it now, and because you've got all these games pretty much at your fingertips, you can get hold of them, you kind of forget that, and that's one way of looking at it. And we've tried to look at it from what would it have been like to spend $9.95 on Glider Pilot, back then. You wouldn't have been happy, and so that's kind of been one of our sort of one of our sort of ethoses, sort of thing, is like looking at it. In the last couple of episodes, sort of thing, we've got the kickstart ratio, or whatever we've called it. Is it worth 4 kickstarts? And so I think that's quite an important thing to do, sort of thing. That these, yes, a lot of them are first game designers taking their foray and their steps into game design, and that's to be applauded and everything like that sort of thing. But I'm always of the opinion, once you ask for money, especially back in 1985, whenever it is, sort of thing, if you're asking for cash, there needs to be a certain level of quality and expectation, and they should run and play and not be buggy, horrible messes or whatever. So there's got to be something, and that's one of the things that I've kind of come at this from. And I think maybe we've not been clear, maybe, I don't know, but I don't know whether you're the same. I think it's something we've kind of discussed, isn't it? And I think it does come through, when we talk about the prices of these games as they were at the time. Some of them are full price, some of them are not. Would you be happy to have been paying £11 for William Wobbler? Probably not. I don't think I would have been. So that's one of the things. So it's been quite an interesting exercise in going back to these games and sort of having that mindset of going, what if I spent this money back then on that? Would I have been happy? And some of them I would have been, some of them I wouldn't have been. But I think, just to sort of echo what you said as well, it is quite interesting to see the development go on. And one of the things, that has, I was, you're completely unaware of this at the time, because kind of you didn't really play these games, or if you did, they were buried deep within a C64 full of turbo tapes or something like that, and you didn't really take much notice of them. But the amount of old software, this old US software that got dumped into the UK market, being put up against it, sold at full price. Some of these duds that we've had to look at, like Migali Ace and things like that, I found that quite surprising, because that's not something I was even really aware of. But you kind of look at the the release dates of some of these, and then you see them being sort of foisted out into the market at full price with big glossy adverts in the magazines and stuff, and you go buy them and it's like, oh, been sold a lemon here.
Yep.
And I think that was something I wasn't aware of. I don't know if that continues into, I mean, I know a couple of the games, you've got some big games coming up at the start of 1986, especially from LucasArts or Lucasfilms, whatever they're called back then. So there were some, obviously, but I mean, and it doesn't apply to all US software. We've got some great US software in this, summer games, winter games, some games too, sorry. So it doesn't, Pit Stop 2, there's some great games coming out from the US, but I think that was one of the things that really did stand out to me a little bit, I think, in looking back over this period of time. It feels almost like a transition period where we're getting kind of, the people who are making these games are getting better, and this kind of, it'll still go on. I'm pretty sure sort of thing, we'll play some absolute dross over the next year's worth of games. I'm pretty sure of it. So it's not going to go away, but hopefully, the quality will go up and we'll see. But, that's not to say that the quality of some games has not been very high this year, because it really has.
Well, when it's high, it's high. And there are some exceedingly great titles in there. But like you said, it's a bit peppered with some of the dross that seems to be surrounding them. Interestingly, here's a thing for you. So how much did your Commodore 64 cost, if you remember back then?
It would have been, I think it was 200 quid plus.
Yeah.
I remember that.
So if we're talking about how much that would have cost now in terms of inflation, let's say £500 in 1985 money is actually about 1,325 quid now. And £10 in 1985 money is £26.50 now. So these games companies in the equivalent money are asking for £25. Now, if you released a game of the standard of, if you made the equitable standard for the Xbox or the PlayStation and charged the equivalent money, people would be in uproar. Or they simply wouldn't, it would die. The reviews would kill it within seconds because, of course, social media and everything that can do all of that. Mm-hmm. But without all of that, there's a lot of money to be made out of this kind of exploitation is really what it was, of people's, novice understanding of games and how they would operate on a computer.
And the thing is as well, I mean, obviously we focus on the Commodore 64. That's what we grew up with. That's what we played. We did have friends with Spectrums. I had a friend with an Amstrad.
You use that term friend loosely, though.
No, he was a friend, but it was a singular friend with an Amstrad.
He was the only one with an Amstrad.
I knew a few people with Spectrums. Yeah. I knew quite a few people with Commodore 64s. I think I knew more people with BBC Micros and Acorns, but I knew one person with an Amstrad.
I knew someone with an Auric Atmos. How's that for weird? Because that was got to be the most disappointing Christmas/birthday present he ever got. Right, I've got you a computer. Yeah, he's at Commodore 64. Yeah. No, it's better than that. Hold on to your socks, kids. I've got us an Auric Atmos. Oh, what use are they?
What even is it?
I went round to his house and he was going to show me this game. I forget what it was. It's something like Billy Bobby socks or something like that. And it was just, I was like, and I've been, at this point I'd seen Ghostbusters on a Commodore 64. So when this appeared on the screen, I was like, okay, have fun with that.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. I had one friend with a VIC-20. That's the weird thing.
I knew someone had one of those.
So there were a raft of home computers around at this time, and it amazes me because there is if we look at the level of dross to good hardware sort of thing, we're 2 years out from the American crash, which was because of the quality and the low quality of so much software that people were like, you want me to pay $40 for this rubbish? And I know obviously ours were cheaper sort of thing, but if you look at, I imagine that if somebody else did this show, like they called it Crash to the Past, you can have that on me if someone wants to do that. If someone did that, we can agree on royalties. So if someone did that sort of thing and you looked at the Spectrum games in the same period, I'm pretty sure you probably about 80% would be garbage.
Yep.
This is endemic in this period of time sort of thing where there are so many terrible games across the board on all platforms, on all computers, that it's amazing sort of thing that the same thing, another crash, didn't happen in the Europe sort of thing, because like I said, we're getting this shovelware from the US, and you could imagine sort of thing that with enough people buying enough crap copies of Dickie's Diamonds to form some kind of like, I'm not buying any more of this rubbish. You're not having any more. Let's get rid of this computer sort of thing. Let's actually use it for spreadsheets, as it was said. It's remember, it's a CBM 64. This is supposed to be a business machine. Let's use it for that. I could envisage a different future where that crash happened over here, and it surprises me that it didn't. I can only assume that as Brits we're just kind of used to rubbish. I don't know.
It's an acceleration. I know 8 months doesn't seem like a long time in terms of a month on month where there's only a few games coming out that are good and there's quite a a lot that are bad, but the ratio starts to change, and and it changes quite quickly. So we've gone from having quite a few duds and maybe the odd decent one to now we're starting to get one or two every issue of Zzap. There's been some good ones, and there seems to be at least one really good one. So we've gone Summer Games, we've had Where They Exploded Fifth, and so on and so on and so on. So we know that that does get better, and it's kind of like a hockey stick kind of curve. So it sort of suddenly goes up. So it's not like this is going to be by 1995 we're going to have a really decent version of Pac-Man. We know that there's an escalation, and it happens very, very quickly.
Yeah, we know that now with hindsight, but back then,
we didn't know any different, did we?
Would you spot it coming? I don't know. Well, I don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. And what was our benchmark? I always compared the games I played to the only thing I could compare them to, which was the arcades. So they were always going to be inferior to the arcades, but they were always better than Pong or those shoot the dot things or the grandstand multi-game thing that we had, which was bizarre to say the least.
But don't forget, in the arcade, you were probably playing things like Star Wars at this point and Tron.
Yeah. I like Tron.
Just off the top of my head, there's two that in the arcade are amazing.
Yeah.
Tron's great. I could see. It's one of those things that just occurs to me when we're doing these things that it is surprising that you get this sort of level of badness, and it would only take a game like as we saw with something like E.T. or Pong or something like that. But I imagine the thing with computers is that it's not like the machine's going to collapse if international tennis is terrible.
No,
because it's made by the platform holder. I suppose that is and we never had anything like the size of E.T. or the Pac-Man ports.
No, true.
To impact. So I suppose that you're kind of lucky because there was such a breadth of software that
true.
I don't know.
And I suppose it's vicarious consumerism, really, in a way. And by that I mean that in order to get games for your Commodore 64, you had to convince somebody. So these were a level of investment in something. So and I don't know about you, but I didn't have the kind of parents that understood the idea of having to buy something repeatedly for the same thing. So when I said I'd like to get a new game, they're well, what's wrong with the games you've got? And it's because there's new ones out, and it took me. I don't think I ever managed to convince my dad that there was a logic to that argument. It's just like, well, why do you need new ones when you've got these ones? You haven't finished those ones you've got, and I mean, I can't tell you how long it took me to convince my dad to buy me a 1541 disc drive for the Commodore 64. That was like going into some kind of fierce debate and fierce, it was like a strategic placement of thought processes. It took me months to convince him because he just didn't get what I was actually asking for. In the end, he just gave up. He's like, I don't know what you're even saying. But do you see what I mean? I suppose what I'm saying is that it's just nowadays with that idea of pester power, purchasing, buying things, we just take it as read that that's something that is done. If you buy an Xbox, you're going to be buying games for the life of that Xbox. But back then, the parents who were paying for this didn't understand that. Why do you need to buy more games? These are expensive. Play that one more or learn to program the stupid thing. I didn't buy you it so you could play games on it all the time because we all pitched that, didn't we? All pitched I can program on it and everything.
Yeah, it'll help with my schoolwork.
Yeah, I tried that one as well. Yeah, I'll do way better at my schoolwork. As it turns out, I actually did. I can't help but think that my early time with the Commodore 64 and learning to program it as I did back then and spending time playing all the games with you and all my friends, I now work full-time in IT. There's a direct correlation. Yeah. And now we're talking about video games again, which we did predominantly through our teen life. So it's all gone full circle. The circle of life.
Absolutely. Some may say starting a podcast about the Commodore 64 in your late 40s is a sign of a midlife crisis. Not me, though. I love Krusty.
Not me. That's why I went out immediately to quell that by buying a C64 Mini.
I think on that note, that's memories and recollections of this year and viewpoints and thoughts. So
yes,
it's been a good year. I've really enjoyed going back to them. I have to say, I've over the whole, even the garbage, even the rubbish one sort of thing there's been something I've taken away from it, whether it for whatever sort of thing every game I've played sort of thing has been educational in some way sort of thing. So after 30 odd years, I finally got some education from the machine, as I promised I would. So it has been. So there's been, it's been good revisiting some. It's been interesting playing some that I've never played before that I've really liked, and obviously some horrors. So we're going to go through them now. So we're going to take a quick break for some music, and then we're going to come back with our first set of awards, and that is Best Visuals. welcome back. So we're looking at our first category for the awards for 1985, and that category is Best Visuals, Best Graphics, Best Looking Game, whatever you want to call it, sort of thing. We're looking at, those lovely sprites and scrolling routines and all those kind of cool things, animations and stuff that made us go, ooh, that's quite nice, and all that. So these are the games we've considered. There's quite a few here, but we're not going to obviously put all these into our final list. So the nominations for Best Visuals are Cauldron, Airwolf, Shadowfire, Super Pipeline 2, BC2 Grog's Revenge, Drop Zone, Entombed, Gribbly's Day Out, Beachhead 2, Way of the Exploding Fist, Elidon, Skyfox, Rupert and the Toymaker's Party, Hypersports, Summer Games 2, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Note of Yesod, Paradroid, Winter Games, Karateka, Scarabaeus, and Rupert and the Ice Palace. It's a decent list of games there with some really nice visuals, I think. So what we're going to do now is we're going to whittle this down quickly, sort of thing. We're both going to pick 3 each, and that's going to be our kind of final list, and then we're going to hash at it to see which we think is the winner of the best visuals for 1985, and have a couple of runners up as well. So that's how we're going to do this. You're probably going to disagree with us, fair play. It's the awards.
Everyone's entitled to their opinions, but
everybody
we're the
is
only ones giving
entitled
out
to
the
their
awards.
opinion. Yes, we are the only ones giving out the awards. So at this point, this is our our sort of list for consideration for best visuals. So Graham, what do you want to put in first?
So my first selection out of the list of games you've mentioned is Way of the Exploding Fist, because you have ginormous, great big sprites, multiple fight controls, and a really great visual experience. It feels like a fighting game because it is one.
Yep. Absolutely. I'm going to put Summer Games 2 in. There are lots of reasons why I would put Summer Games 2 in. The sterling animation, the level of quality across all 8 events is never less than excellent. The amazing, opening ceremonies, the closing ceremonies. There's so much attention to detail in so many of these events. It almost, it's almost too much to take in at times, sort of thing. There's so much going on. Whether it's even just a singular, the singular guy doing his triple jump sort of thing with the TV screen in the background and things like that. There's just so much in Summer Games 2 that I think to not include it would be a travesty. So that's mine for Summer Games 2. Your next one?
So my next game out of the list is Paradroid. Mm-hmm. This is because Paradroid is the complete visual system of a game. It looks like it's on a kind of giant spaceship. The robot graphics are really good. Everything about it is big, chunky, robotic, bold, bas relief, really cool. And that's just the looks alone, but the whole thematic of the game is completely given over to its central core concept, and that works to this day. So Paradroid's my second choice.
My second choice is going to be Scarabaeus. Scarabaeus, I think, primarily for its devotion to the cause of keeping its atmospheric craziness all thematically consistent. Technically, it's excellent, but it's got a really good first-person, fast-moving maze, which for the time is really quite impressive. The icons, the use of its sort of Egyptian styling is all really nice, well-designed. There's a consistency, there's a coherency to it. The GUI is quite innovative and pleasing to look at. The intro is nice through the spaceship and your little guy running in and the little dog and everything. I think similar to Paradroid, it has a consistency to what it is actually trying to do, and that's why I think Scarabaeus would be in the running.
Excellent, a good choice.
Yeah, your third one?
Now this is difficult because there's some really good candidates in there, and it's actually a toss-up between 2, but I'm going to go with my gut, and I'm going to go for Cauldron. I'm eliding the fact that Cauldron's a very, 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 very difficult game. Cauldron looks the part. The witch sprite is really cool. The way she flies on a broom is really cool. The way she walks, and the graphics have always carried with it a really strong sense of the kind of game it is. And it's something that Palace, and who made Cauldron, carry through all of their games. It has the kind of Palace look, and it's the first of that kind of type. I think it looks really, really good to this day. So Cauldron for me.
Okay, so our final game for consideration, I think I'm going to put Winter Games in. Oh, am I? Yes, I am. I think it's different enough from Summer Games 2. I think there's, in some respects it may even be a step up, in some not. I don't know. We'll bash this out in a moment. I think there's enough new stuff in Winter Games. There's some primarily backdrops, and boring as those as not so it's less than stellar ice skating things are. The animation is still great, and it's another amazing technical feat from Epix that I think needs rewarding. I could have gone for others, but and maybe putting Summer Games 2 and Winter Games in is thingy, but you know what? They were on graphical fire this year, and I think that needs to be lauded. So that's my final selection.
Absolutely.
Is there any that you think could go in that you think one more would you like to put in?
Yeah, if I was going to put an also ran in there, for me, I'd put Drop Zone in.
Okay.
Drop Zone's quite sparse in its graphics, but visually it looks great and it looks the part. So I would put Drop Zone in. It is obviously, it's like Defender, it's Defender-ish, but you know what? It's got different graphics. It is pacey, but it's that visual compelling look of that game. It runs at such a pace, and it's this graphics and colour, flashing and blowing up and everywhere. It's from a game sort of production point of view, it has all the trimmings and all of the stuff. So it's definitely, it's just I prefer those other games that I put in the list, but it's certainly an also ran for me.
Yeah, if I was going to have an also ran, it would be Shadowfire.
Yeah.
We said at the time, I mean, this was one of the games we looked at in episode 1, issue 1. And even at the time, we said that we really liked its pixel art. And it looks great. It's got a really nicely defined style sort of thing. It's let down a little sort of thing in the fact that it's almost over-designed, because they've gone to such a degree sort of thing to over-design those icons as to almost make them slightly illegible and sort of hard to read when you need to be, up against a timer, so you need to be able to sort of see them fast sort of thing. However, the sort of the portraits that you get that come up in the window, the title screen and everything about it it's a strong visual, design throughput in that game. And I'd happily see that on our final list. So it may be down the bottom sort of thing, but it may not be as my also ran. I think Shadowfire would go in.
Okay, good choice.
Okay, I think obviously Drop Zone and Shadowfire are not going to be in our top 3, are they? I don't think.
No.
I don't think. It's going to be out those first 6. So, okay, so let's go at this then. So we've got Way of the Exploding Fist, Summer Games 2, Paradroid, Scarabaeus, Cauldron, and Winter Games. Let's put it this way sort of thing. Did I pick any games that you would have picked?
Strangely, Summer Games 2.
Okay.
So out of all the ones you've picked, Summer Games 2 for me is one I would have agreed on. If there wasn't other stronger candidates for me personally, I would have gone for that one as well.
Okay.
But your choice is for mine.
Way of the Exploding Fist. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would have been on my list without a shadow of a doubt. Cauldron, I get. So can we agree sort of thing? Let's do an agreement then sort of thing. Way of the Exploding Fist, Summer Games 2, going to be in the top 3?
Yeah, I think so. I think they have to be.
I think we're in agreement there. Whether they're going to whether it's going to be number 1 or number 2, we'll hash them out sort of thing. So I think what we're talking about here now is number 3. Mm-hmm. So out of Paradroid, Scarabaeus, Cauldron, and Winter Games, all very different games.
Very.
We've got sort of representational droid sci-fi. We've got ancient Egypt, we've got witchy style shenanigans and Winter Games. Now I'm happy to drop Winter Games.
Okay.
The backdrops are better in Winter Games, but I think as an overall package, Summer Games 2 is better.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to pull Winter Games out of the equation.
Okay.
I'll let you maybe speak about any of the other 3, unless you want Winter Games in there, of course.
No, and I think you're right. I think we've got Summer Games 2 is better than Winter Games. It's simple as that, and it would be strange to have them both in there. And I would say that if it comes up as a choice between Paradroid, Scarabaeus, and Cauldron, for me, out of those 3, Paradroid would be my option for the 3rd place in there. Scarabaeus is great visually, and it is clever, but it's not as all-encompassing as Paradroid. Palace games get better, actually, and Cauldron 2 actually builds on Cauldron in terms of its graphics, which we'll probably cover in the next year's awards. So I would happily drop Cauldron out and leave it down to just for that elusive 3rd place, a battle between Scarabaeus and Paradroid, which is awful choice, really, Hobson's choice. But
it is, because I think both of them do exactly what they set out to do and do it very well. I'm trying to sort of think. So for in-game sort of thing, I mean, they're both really good-looking in-game. Paradroid is much more simplistic, representational, but its bas-relief graphics are really nice. There's no getting around that, and there's some really nice touches in there from a visual standpoint. Remember, this is best visuals, so your health on your on the
all
rotating
the
health
designs
on the thing, all the robot designs. The use of lighting, the use of that grey. I always love that use of the grayscale when you cleared a level. I always think that's great.
When it dims down,
And one of the things we've sort of forget to mention, sort of thing, is that it's got one of my favourite explosion animations.
Yeah.
When you shoot a droid, that piece of animation sort of thing, the fiery boom, whatever sort of thing, is so good sort of thing that I think I've probably nicked it when I've done C64 sprites before, because it's lovely. It's just a really nice explosion sort of thing that is really good. So that looks great. Scarabaeus, I don't know, with Scarabaeus, is it more the whole atmosphere? Would it work? I don't know. It's a hard one, isn't it? This is really tricky.
Yeah, I think it's sci-fi versus kind of adventure, isn't it? And they're very different conceptually. They're very different. One is tech, one is very much not tech. I don't know. There's some really nice touches on Scarabaeus. The little GUI interface with a little health meter and the way you kind of control the game, and obviously the kind of first-person 3D effect is very, very clever.
The thing with Scarabaeus, okay, this is the thing with Scarabaeus sort of thing. What do we think to the monsters?
They're okay, but they're kind of blocky and a bit ungainly, a bit floaty around, and you don't see much of them, do you? They're okay. They're okay.
Yeah.
They're what you'd expect in kind of a maze game, really.
If I'm looking for something to split these two, I think Paradroid is more consistent across the board.
Well, Paradroid has much more variety of enemy.
It does, but
you're up against 4 different enemy types in Scarabaeus, whereas in Paradroid you've got up to 900 different kinds. Well, not obviously, but there's 9. There's probably about 20, 30 droids, isn't there?
Yeah, but let's not forget something, that they're only represented as, still images.
Yeah, but each one's been drawn. Each one's in there. They all look different. They all look like their purpose.
I think that's what I'm saying, sort of thing. To me, there isn't a part of Paradroid which I look at. I mean, some of the droids are a bit goofy looking sort of thing, but it doesn't mean they're bad. And I think I'm kind of agreeing with you sort of thing in that I think that Paradroid has a more consistent...
Yes.
There's not one thing part in Paradroid I can go, that doesn't look great. That doesn't look as if it fits. Whereas Scarabaeus, chasing that mummy thing around... It's just a bit wibbly wobbly in it, and it's a bit. Yeah. From a technical point of view, what it's doing is incredible, making it go down, thing isn't going out of view. Not getting that sort of thing. But I don't think the monsters are at the same level as the rest of the design in that game.
No.
And that's I'm picking a hair here. I'm picking one hair because I can't split them in any other way.
No.
From a technical point of view.
And I think just there's a little bit more world in Paradroid. There's a bit more visual world. So you've got that computers, you've got the map of the dreadnoughts, you've got the kind of way you go up and down the lifts, the way it coordinates with all of the sort of as you go up and down, and the lighting and the effects and the visuals. It's completely compelling, and that's not to say Scarabaeus isn't, but Scarabaeus kind of looks the same, whatever. I don't know, you could say the same about Paradroid, rather. It kind of looks the same, but I don't know. Isn't it difficult? It's a nightmare. I don't know. My money's on Paradroid, though. I think that's...
I think that's where we are. Let's just call it. So third place is Paradroid.
Okay.
We haven't even done first place yet.
I know which one I'm going to put at number 1. But which one are you going to put at number 1?
You're going to go with Fist, aren't you?
No.
You're going to go with Summer Games 2?
I'm going to go with Summer Games 2.
Oh, then we're in agreement then.
And I can tell you why I've gone for Summer Games 2, because don't get me wrong, everything about Way of the Exploding Fist is great, but it's one set of animation applied to 2 characters that are different by process of being facing a different direction. Summer Games 2 is 8 different games with 8 different animations, lots of different character animations in there, lots of stuff, a beginning ceremony, an end ceremony. Come on, it's so much more. And in terms of its visuals and graphics, it offers you an entire Olympic experience.
Yes.
And I think for that alone, and the quality of the animation in that game, which is staggeringly good for its time.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, Way of the Exploding Fist is an excellent second place. There's no doubt, and Paradroid third. But Summer Games 2, talk about a game full of really great visual animation and great compelling graphics. It really is. So for me, Summer Games 2.
It's the simpler things in Summer Games 2 that I would praise it for. There's so much in Summer Games 2, and it's, like you said, across the board at such a high level. There's not the kayaking, is a bit simpler at the end, but it still looks great. The fencing's great. There's not a down point in Summer Games 2 at all. And yeah, Way of the Exploding Fist is incredible. It looks amazing. When I went back to it now, sort of thing, I was pleasantly surprised by just how good it did look. Because, in your mind's eye, you have one view and you're not sure if it's still like that. And it's got the lovely backgrounds and the bull and everything like that. But I think Summer Games 2 is a step beyond what Epics had done, what pretty much anyone had done at this point. And to me, I'm glad you're in there with me, sort of thing, because Summer Games 2 would be my number 1. I think it's an astonishing achievement. It's incredible. And to this day, it's still a great game to play. And look, part of that appeal, I'm not going to spray it, is that visual appeal.
It is.
So
the best visual award goes to
Summer Games 2 by Epics. Runners up in second place is Way of the Exploding Fist, and in third place is Paradroid, with honourable mentions to Scarabaeus, Cauldron, Winter Games, and Drop Zone and Shadowfire. But I think all the games you originally listed are worth a shout because they all have very, very nice visuals. But
they do.
Well done, Epics, and well done, Summer Games 2. That's it. That's our first award out the way. Best visuals, Summer Games 2. Woo! There we go. We're done. We're going to go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll be looking at best sound effects. Not to be confused with best music. So see you in a minute. Welcome back. That was the best visuals. Well done, Summer Games 2. Okay, so up next we've got best sound effects. So we're going to do a similar sort of thing again. We've got a list of nominees, and then we'll see which ones we pull out and see which ones we want to put into our final list. So the initial list for best sound are Theatre Europe, Drop Zone, Gribbly's Day Out, Beachhead 2, Way of the Exploding Fist, Kennedy Approach, Summer Games 2, Hypersports, Rescue on Fractalis, Rascal, Paradroid, Winter Games, Scarabaeus, Battleix, and Ace. Those are our nominations. We're going to follow the same pattern again. We're going to pull out our 3 nominations, and then we'll go from there. So, Graham, which one would you like to pull out first from that list?
My first game from the list for best sound is Beachhead 2. It's not the only game in the list that's got speech, but it's not just the way the speech works, but the way the speech works with the kind of the machine gun fire and the various other noises and the spot effects in the game. All adds up for it to be a really nice sound effects experience overall. They're all thematically linked. It fits the bill. So that's my first nomination. And yours?
I'm going to put in Kennedy Approach. I was quite surprised with Kennedy Approach. I'd never played it, but for an integral use of speech, Kennedy Approach is quite sparse and otherwise sort of sound effects wise, pretty much, but it's that use of speech in Kennedy Approach that is really, really good and unusual. There's loads of it, loads of speech in there, and it wouldn't be the same game and experience without it. So for that reason, the clarity is good, the quality is good, the volume of it, the amount of it, and how it actually fits into what that game is trying to do. I think the sound effects, the speech and everything that goes with it's worthy of being in there from my point of view. So that's my first nomination. So your second one?
My second nomination, bit of an easy one, this one really. Way of the Exploding Fist. What's not to like about that amazing Bruce Lee scream, then followed by all of the actions and counteractions in the game being played off probably low quality audio samples, but samples are the same. So it gives you that feel of a real fighting game. Even when you connect in the game, it has a real kind of power to it because of that. And so it's streets ahead. Nothing else is like it at this time. And I have to say, I think it's definitely got some of the best sound in the business at the time. So that's my second nomination.
Good call. Okay, my next one is Paradroid. Paradroid sounds like droids talking. Essentially, and I know from remembering reading Braybrook's diary at the time that's what he was going for, and he nailed it. It feels like machines burbling away at each other. And so in that respect sort of thing, so that opening title screen, it's not music so much as but just the ambient sound of all that kind of noisy sort of thing. It feels machine-like.
It does.
It really suits it sort of thing. And then not only that, but the sound effects within the actual game itself.
Yes.
There's not a bad one amongst them sort of thing. Whether it's the boom of the disruptor, the gun, the laser fire, the explosions, he's even managed to do a non-annoying low health sound, and make that work sort of thing. To when you actually get your health back, the sound effect, the simple sound effect of like in the mini game as well. Everything works. Everything, as we said in the visual sort of section, is in service to that. This feels like a game about robots, and everything is in service to that, and everything works, and it sounds, yes, it's a SID chip, so yes, it's it's artificial noise coming from a synthesizer kind of chip. That's great, but everything feels cohesive again. Paradroid's so good. But that's why I would put Paradroid in there as my second choice. Your third one?
My third choice, it's actually quite difficult because there's some really good contenders in there. So my third choice, I'm going to put in Rascal, because what was light on the Defender type gameplay was brilliant in its terms of its arcade-style audio. And in a sea of games where that's a difficult thing that don't seem to achieve that. And yeah, the game wasn't necessarily great, or one of the greats, but it had amazing sound effects that really, really worked for it. So Rascal for me, for the third choice.
My third one is Scarabaeus.
The easy-to-miss sound effects, if you...
Well, this is true. If you leave the music on, but press the M key when you start playing to turn the music off, and it's got some of the most atmospheric. If you're supposed to be a spaceman in your helmet, then it nails. There's
Breathing.
a heartbeat, breathing sound sort of thing, which is just so atmospheric, and it transforms the game. It transforms the game into a claustrophobic, maze nightmare. And for, a single sound effect to do that, really, a single piece of sort of audio design because the music's fine. It's an okay piece of music, don't get me wrong. But, for, 1985, for a piece of sound work to just transform something into, that kind of visceral kind of experience, which is what I feel when I play Scarabaeus with that music on, especially if you play it now through a decent pair of headphones. You get that really good sound. It's brilliant. It's a superb soundscape that just is absolutely terrifying at times, sort of thing. And I think Scarabaeus is sound work is genius, brilliant. So that for me, that would go in there as well, I think. Do we have any late contenders that we would like to add?
Yeah, I think if I was going to put another one in as a sort of a nearly got there kind of thing, I didn't like the game at all. But Batalix has got great sounds because it's got great sort of crazy sounds. But I didn't get on with the game at all. It's just not my cup of tea. But there's no denying that there's a style of the audio that goes with that game, and erratic and crazy it may be visually, but the audio really does pick up the kind of thematic of that, and it does hit you all the time with constant crazy sounds and noises. It feels like it's got a lot going on, and it's quite exciting to hear that. So crazy game, but the audio does really work. Well, the sound effects, should I say?
Yeah. I think you're right. It was quite nice sounds in that thing. If I was going to throw one more in, there's a few there that I could do. I mean, all these were picked because we like the sound effects for them. That's what they do. But if I was going to pick one above the others, it would probably be Rescue on Fractalis. Again, it's that creating mood. And essentially, it's one bit again. It's the hammering on the chip.
Yeah.
It's genius. It's absolutely genius that you can just leave them out there, or you can just fry them. Or there's just, and the sound effects that go with that are quite that tapping on the hull door. It works so well, sort of thing, and it creates a mood. It's the use of sound to add to the world itself, rather than just being a bleep or a bloop or something. It's an actual in-world sound effect rather than just a sound effect for a sound effect's sake, sort of thing, and it serves a purpose. So for me, that would be Rescue on Fractalis would be the one I would put in. I don't think there's much more to the sound effects in that game. There's nothing else that stood to mind, so it would just be that one thing, which is why I would just. But it was so good, and it lent such a moment. That's why I put it in. Okay. So I think we can Battleix and Rescue on Fractalis probably are also rounds. We have 6 in the running. I'm going to say that I would have put Way of the Exploding Fist in if you hadn't.
Yep.
So I think we can be agreed that that's going to be in our top 3, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any that I put in that you would have put in?
Paradroid, without a doubt.
Okay.
And the elusive third place. That's a tricky one, isn't it?
We're looking at Beachhead 2, Kennedy Approach, Rascal, and Scarabaeus.
It's like battle of the speeches in it with those top 2 there, the Beachhead 2 and Kennedy Approach, because they've got a lot of speech in it. But is that their only thing? Kennedy Approach would be nothing without that. It would just be a radar. And so it lends so much realism to that game.
Yes.
It's so difficult, isn't it? Beachhead 2, if it wasn't for the quirky sound effects, it kind of be some of that would be kind of average, but there's a lot of speech in there, but there's also other sounds in there. But are they lending, Kennedy Approach wouldn't function without that sort of speech. But
exactly.
But Scarabaeus and that breathing, that really does give you a paranoid feeling. It is excellent. Rascal has got amazing arcade sound effects, but you would expect that in a shooting game. Scarabaeus, I think, out of those 3, for me, is from a sound effects point of view, kind of does fit, but it's hard, isn't it? Well, I mean, what about you? Where's your radar pointing?
Because we pick 3, and I don't pick 3 in any particular order as well, sort of thing. So, Way of the Exploding Fist, Paradroid, okay, we've got those. Beachhead 2, I love the speech. I think, as we mentioned in our review of it, sort of thing, the buh and the and everything about it. It lends it a fun approach. But I think that may be almost to its detriment a bit, sort of thing, because it makes it a little bit light-hearted, which is supposed to, I know it's a 2-player thingy game sort of thing, but when you compare it to something like, the previous Beachhead and Raid over Moscow were a bit more serious in tone. If Raid over Moscow is obviously a bit questionable, but they're a bit more serious, and I think this is going for that. But maybe the speech actually makes it almost like a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, the hey, don't shoot me, and
that kind of thing, and so it kind of drifts it into that. Kennedy approach, like you said, there would be no game. It would be dull as dishwater rather than the tense nightmare that it actually is, with these different planes asking for directions and what the hell's going on, and hearing the floor and it's whatever. I think you're right, Rascal. We picked it up at the time, sort of thing, when we looked at it, because it wasn't a game I knew, but it had great arcade style sound effects, and so that is something to be lauded. But I think for me, I think I'd have to go with Scarabaeus. The effect that sound effect has on the game is almost transformative.
Yes.
It makes it into something, so much more, and not a Rob Hubbard score, not a thing on a spring, but this fits thematically. Like we said with Paradroid, this fits thematically with what that game is trying to do.
Absolutely. And interestingly, if I roll back the time clock to many, many years ago when we were discussing, and we had discussions like this way back then, 30 years ago, when we were playing different games, because you'd play different games at different stages with different people and borrow them off this person. And, the whole way you came across games is very different to it is now. But whenever you spoke about Scarabaeus, even back then, you always made a point of saying about the fact that it was the breathing and the atmosphere. So that's obviously something that stuck with you from when you first played it right the way through to now. So 30 years later, it still has the same effect. That is genuine sound effects power, that.
Yeah.
So
I think it goes in our top 3. Yeah.
I think it has to. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, don't get me wrong. The speech in Beachhead 2 and Kennedy Approach is amazing for what it is. But 30 years later, Scarabaeus has still made a great paranoid experience because of that breathing and that sort of pumping heart sound. So definitely now, out of those 3, that is a proper difficult choice, isn't it?
Yeah. So our top 3 in no order at this point in time are Way of the Exploding Fist, Paradroid, and Scarabaeus.
You could not get much more of a diverse range of games there.
No, we hadn't. I mean, we had the Scarabaeus Paradroid discussion for visual sort of thing, but again, here, those 2 games are just, consistent thematically in what they do, aren't they? They're just, they're polished products.
I think if I'm going to go with my absolute heart on this, don't get me wrong, I love the sound effects in Way of the Exploding Fist, but they're derivative of a thing. The soundscape that's created by the sound effects in Paradroid is genuinely astonishing even now, considering that is a very clever blend of bloops, bleeps, whizzes, zooshes and sounds and things, all amalgamated into creating the whole atmosphere of that game from an audio perspective. That's an achievement. That is an achievement to do that and to make it feel, because that never gets annoying. And if you think of some of the games we've played where the small loops of sounds get very annoying very quickly, Paradroid never suffers from that, and that is genuinely amazing. So
that's
out of 3 for me, I think I'd have to go with Paradroid for the top spot. But this ain't a dictatorship.
That's Beachhead 2.
Yeah, we've got to fight outright knife fights. That sounds very dangerous. I don't think we should do that.
Over 9 innings across a bit of water.
We'll just go find a nearby fishing pond, kick the fisherman off, go get a Commodore 64, play it indoors. Much more fun for you. And then we'll just, across the river, just throw knives. I don't like the idea of throwing knives. Can we throw something that doesn't hurt?
Clams?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't think I've ever come across a clam. Or I had one thrown at me. I've got a whole train of thought in my mind that's probably completely not suitable for podcasting right now.
No, because I think that same point is that same train of thought is now going across my mind as well.
I don't think having clams thrown at me sounds idyllic in some ways, but horrific in others. Anyway, so where are you going to go? The question is, where the Exploding Fist, Paradroid, Scarabaeus. I know where my pointer's pointing. Where about you?
I love Way of the Exploding Fist. We said it again, sort of thing about that. The Bruce Lee scream that emits from the speakers is incredible. The music is sorry, that's not the music. The sound effects, the punches, the blips, the boops, sort of thing. That everything is great in that game, sort of thing. But I think you're right, sort of thing. It's a bit rough on the ears at times. There is a bit of a moment, sort of thing, where it does get a bit. And I think it is derivative. I think you're right in that respect. I think Scarabaeus is nothing without that thingy, and and you can play the game entirely without it and miss it, which it pains me to say. But you could do that, and you might be sat here now listening to us going, "What heartbeat?" In which case I'll be like, yeah. So you might be, but
press the M key.
Press the M button. Yeah, it's just waiting there. Why that in the default, I'll never know. No. But it could be something. But I'm gonna agree with you. Paradroid is as a soundscape. I remember it got like a really high score, didn't it, back in Zap, and people moaned something. There was no music or anything. It's like completely missing the point of what that game was doing, which was thematically going, here's a load of robots, and this is what they might sound like, and and everything about it, sort of thing, going round, bouncing off stuff, buying, doing all the kind of everything about it. And you are right that just that hum, the background hum, the throbs, the everything about it just don't become annoying in any shape or form, and just works to solidify what is a brilliant game. And so for me, best sound would have to go to Paradroid.
So the best sound award goes to
Paradroid
from Houston Games, created by none other than Andrew Braybrook.
Andrew Braybrook.
We'll accept this award on behalf of Andrew. He can't be with us today.
No, we can't. In runners-up, Way of the Exploding Fist and Scarabaeus, with honourable nominations to Beachhead 2, Kennedy Approach, Rascal, Battleix, and Rescue on Fractalis, all utilising the SID chip to create excellent sound effects for our oral pleasure.
Oh God, no!
That went a bit wrong.
I don't know what you were doing when you were playing those games, and that's oral pleasure with an A.
A-A-U, yes, that's how you spell it. Yes, oral pleasure.
Oral. We'll say oral.
Oral.
Harold.
Right.
More meat in the claws, Harold.
That's best sound. Okay, so up next, we're going to go away for a brief break now, and we're going to come back. What are we going to do next? Let's have a look. I think coming back, we're going to do the Sunday Best Award. So stick around for that. So what games were purchased that went in the drawer and kept for Sunday Best? Find out after the break. Welcome back. So we've had best visuals, we've had best sound effects. Now we've got the category which we like to call the Sunday Best. So these are the games which might have been bought by an unknowing relative. When they saw you playing it, sort of thing, you explained to them, sort of thing, that you didn't want to play it too much because it might wear out the tape. So you wanted to put it away in the drawer for Sunday Best. These are games that you'd only bring out, maybe when these relatives actually turned up. This is the dross. So this is your Sunday Best drawer. This is the list to be envied. Being on this list is not something you want. But anyway, and unfortunately, I think this is probably our longest list.
Well, do you know what? This isn't all inclusive either. This is like the best of the worst, I suppose, really. And this is just the list of those. And I hesitate to call them the best of the worst. This is like the worst of the worst.
I don't know what it is. Anyway, right, so our nominations for the going into the draw for Sunday Best are Hunter Patrol, Cops and Robbers, Dickie's Diamonds, Ghost Chaser, Silu, Vegan Attack, Merlin, Give My Regards to Broad Street, Web Dimension, Starfire, Fire 1, Glider Pilot, Blagger Goes to Hollywood, Cyphoid 9, Circus, Hunchback at the Olympics, Operation Swordfish, Nutcracker, Jack Charlton's Match Fishing, A View to a Kill, Brian Bloodaxe, Ian Botham's Test Cricket, Out on a Limb, Sorcerer Attack, Doughboy, Spy's Demise, and Spy Strikes Back.
Goodness me.
There's
what a collection. That's like the worst Now album ever. Can you imagine if that was a compilation? Someone gave you a compilation, you'd be like, and they called it Sunday Best. C64 Sunday Best. Each one of these games a classic. That would be away for best forever. Goodness me, what a list. Gee, what a stinker.
This is what would cause the crash, isn't it? If you bought this lot.
It's a wonder it didn't.
That's what I mean. Okay, so spoiled for choice here about what we're going to actually put into our final list. We may need more space. The drawer is going to be very full.
Isn't it just?
It's full to bursting at the moment, sort of thing. But out of that full to bursting drawer, we need to pull out the real stinkers.
Yes,
we do.
And it's difficult. I'm sort of trying to think of a strategy because I don't want to. Because do you go for games that tried and failed? Do you go for games that failed but tried? Or do you just go for games that are just rubbish because they're rubbish? And these are all in there for many reasons. But they're all rubbish in one way or another.
As Big Tony said, go with your heart.
Go with your heart. Okay, so, oh my gosh, this is a nightmare. Do you know... I'm just going to go for it straight off the bat because I think it's the stupidest game idea. Glider Pilot is from my first choice.
Okay.
Why? Do I need to say why?
You do need to say why.
A glider simulator would have been bad enough anyway, but this is not simulating gliding. It is dull, boring, look at the green, look at the blue nonsense. Unenjoyable. Take all the fun of something, remove all of the bits that make it fun, and what are you left with? Glider Pilot. So, dog egg. Back for you?
I thought it was a light frothy souffle.
I enjoyed it. No, so what's your first choice? It's not easy.
I think I'm going to put Brian Bloodaxe.
I thought you might put that in there.
In there. So we had a slew of these kind of flick screen platformers where obviously the Spectrum heritage was worn plainly on their colour clashing sleeve, and this was another one of those. This starts off badly with poorly chosen Monty Python referencing, if I remember rightly, sort of thing. I'm struggling to remember some of these sort of things because they are so bad. It's like my internal hard drive has just erased them.
Well, to give you a flashback. Brian Bloodaxe was the one that took over your C64.
Yes, it did. And any game where your movement speed is dependent on the amount of enemies on screen. It's just
does not compute.
No. It's just we got enough of these. I mean, for God's sake, Jet Set. If you play Jet Set Willy, fine. You can like Jet Set Willy, you can like Manic Miner, you can like Bounty Bob, you can do all those kind of games. They're fine. Don't do a knockoff version of them with some crap humour that is awful in every respect. That's poorly programmed. That's has terrible slowdown. Slowdown is not something we see it time to time sort of thing, but slowdown on this level,
no.
Because this is coming out about maybe 2-3 months before something like Monty on the Run hits, which is speedy, snappy, fast, and never slows down ever. Nope. Despite everything it's doing, it was awful on every respect. And so I nominate Brian Bloodaxe.
I don't blame you, and I understand. That's all I'm saying with that. So
my counsellor understands.
My second choice, and this isn't easy, believe you me, because I hate almost all of these games with a passion in every possible way for different reasons. I am stuck between two, but you know what? I'm just going to say it. Ian Botham's Test Cricket.
Okay.
Because it's a cricket game played from the most stupid angle possible, featuring a duck that coughs out a cricket ball at some point, and irrefutably stupid game logic of the kind that makes no sense. So they've just taken everything about. I mean, I don't even like cricket. I have absolutely no affinity for cricket at all. However, this is a bad game, and in every possible way, graphics, play, everything's rubbish. Everything. And even the advert was rubbish. So it's just bad form. And it was full price as well, which was the real clincher. So
yeah.
Ian Botham's Test Cricket, get in the drawer.
All right, I'm going to go. It's like a smorgasbord of ass.
It is. Each one of those is a skid mark on the history of the Commodore 64.
I'm trying to give a bit of credence to maybe ones that came out earlier, but but then again, I am looking at these sort of things. These were released in this period and were charged money for.
Yes.
So they're all fair game as far as I'm concerned. But obviously, I'm going to have to put Jack Charlton's Match Fishing in. I have to. It
has to go in there.
It's stupid.
Yes.
I can't. Jack Charlton's Match Fishing is ridiculous in every respect. You can make a decent fishing game. You can do decent fishing stuff, sort of thing. You can look at, later on, obviously, but even in stuff like, simple stuff like in Zelda, you can do top-down fishing. It didn't have to be like this. It didn't have to be like this.
No.
It's stupid. From the idea of, hold your hands under the bloody table to play it. 8 of you. No 8 people are going to sit around for 8 hours. They're going to go fishing or do something else instead. I could have watched Zack Snyder's Justice League twice in this period of time. No. Jack Charlton's Match Fishing is a ridiculous concept, done ridiculously, and badly programmed and bad. It is a bad thing.
Absolutely. And I suspect Jack Charlton agrees. Bless him. Okay, so that's your choice number 2. So my choice number 3, this is actually the hardest one, isn't it? The third one, when you think about it. But
it is.
I'm just going to go for it. Circus Circus. A game clearly programmed by an idiot and drawn by a 3-year-old. So, had no redeeming features at all. It's just rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. It's so rubbish they named it the same thing twice, and that's not. And that's on the box.
The game's so bad we had to name it twice.
Utter crap. So awful. I can't even begin to explain. But everything about it's wrong. Everything about it's wrong. And there's other things that got lower scores in that list in Zzap than Circus Circus. Not much, but there's things that got lower scores. But for me personally, that was an affront to the games, any of the games. It was just it was clearly unfinished and not. It was just rubbish. And then there you go. It's in the drawer.
Okay.
So your final choice.
Oh God. There's so much there. I think it's going to have to be Merlin.
I thought you might put that in there.
Really? I can see the pitch. I tell you what, let's do a fantasy-themed jetpack. Oh, wow, that sounds great. Make that happen. Okay,
Yeah.
I will do. 2 months later, you come back. What have you done?
Yeah, it's like, but just before you go, you do how to program, don't you? Oh, yeah. Just checking, because, it's quite ambitious.
With modern game engines, we don't need programming. Watch. You're fired.
Yeah.
And with good cause.
When he came to show that bit, did you draw these graphics yourself, or did someone help you? Because they're a bit weird. Why is that tree as big as a mountain?
So Merlin is another affront. If you purchase this, whatever it was it $2.99 or $3.99? It was whatever it was.
Too
It was
much.
It was $2.99 too much. You essentially fly around a ginormous cauldron collecting stuff and
big.
dropping it in there, and it's
So
just
big.
ridiculous. It is bad. Yeah, it's another one of those you question yourself playing it. What have I done that's led me to this?
It did bring tears to my eyes.
Yeah, so that's my third one. I think in case of this, because we've got so many, we are going to put another one in. Go on, have at it. Have another one.
Okay, so the fourth one in the list. This is actually, they're getting harder now because each one of the ones I've put in so far are rubbish. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, they are dog egg. So it's just picking a fourth. The dog has now just crouched down and laid another egg. Now I've had to pick up that egg. I've had to go and get rid of it. But what does the egg shape look like? What was written on the box? Oh, that's tricky. There's games I want to put in there, but you know what? I'm going to do it. I wasn't going to do it. I was going to choose something that's far worse. I'm going to put in there A View to a Kill.
Whoa.
And I'm going to put A View to a Kill in it. And I'll tell you why I put it in there. Because as much as the source material's not great, and it ain't, you've got a James Bond game. If you can't make a good James Bond game, there's something very wrong. And you didn't have to do it that way. You didn't have to make it into some complex crazy. Yeah, I know the source material's not great, but you can pick out the bits from a James Bond game and make it into something very... It doesn't have to be what they tried. And it's graphically, it's inept. And that awful open screen where that stickman walks out and wheels a sandwich in that, and everything about it, as soon as you see that, you're like, there's something gone horribly wrong with this game. And in every capacity, that's the game that had the money behind it, I suspect, for that license and all of the talent that went into it. And somebody's interfered with that somewhere, or they pressed the delete button or something happened, and you've deleted my best scrolling code, I'm going to have to rewrite that now and put in something inferior. I don't know what happened, but something went wrong and that came out.
Yeah, so, I think A View to a Kill is an example of not enough time.
Yeah, possibly. But I think this is an unforgiving chart. Make more time.
It is sort of thing. Yeah, if I think that's the marketing people would say we need this game out to coincide with the film. You've got this amount of time. It's the ET syndrome. You've got 6 weeks, whatever sort of thing. So, but it doesn't excuse it because it's still, as we've rightly said, absolute dog egg.
That's right.
I think the last one I'm going to put in. Now, there are a wealth of stuff I could put in. Obviously, this whole list could go in, but one particular one that I think I'm going to put in as our last entry. I could put Cops and Robbers, and I could put Spy Strikes Back, but I just think it's too easy. That's just shooting fish in a barrel.
That's fishing with grenades in it.
That's badly drawn fish in a badly drawn barrel that doesn't look like anything.
It's not animated. That fish.
So I'm going to go with Dickie's Diamonds. A game that led me to, hopefully, thought it would be about Dickie Davis. And so my hopes were dashed immediately when this travesty of a game appeared before my eyes. This is ridiculous. So it's it's a Amidar type nonsense thing where you go around a web as an owl, colouring it in and avoid a spider of some description. I think, and then the spider uncolours the web that you've coloured in. But it's just rubbish. It takes an age to draw the web. But the worst thing about this game, sort of thing, one of the worst things I've seen, sort of thing, is this stupid mechanic that this owl only has a certain number of flights. That's not how owls work. Owls don't have a limit. It's like, oh, that's me done for the day. Oh,
I've exhausted my flight limit, yeah.
I really wish I'd caught that mouse on the last one because I'm out of flight.
Well, it'd be, imagine that, because that can't just apply to one bird species. Every bird in the planet must have a certain number of flights.
Yeah.
So,
it's ridiculous.
We go, I can't go south for the winter. I've run out of flights about 2 weeks ago. I'm just going to have to stay here.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Also, the owl is tiny, or the spider's massive. Something that does. Why would anyone know? I mean, somebody's looked at Hammerdown and gone, I'll have a bit of that. And no, you shouldn't have. You really shouldn't. So my last one is Dickie's Diamonds.
Yeah, and justifiably so, I think. Any game where you can make it more complicated by just adding the more complicated option at the opening, where you can say, just put the extra enemies in. Okay, you have them. No, stupid idea. Crap.
Yeah, it is.
Oh. That list's sinking up the place.
Yeah.
Goodness
I'm tempted
me.
just to go, first place is Joint. But I think
it's easy to do that, isn't it?
It is, but we know we need to stick true to our task of picking the actual, the Sunday best game of this lot. So our nominations, our final group of games is Glider Pilot, Brian Bloodaxe, Ian Botham's Test Cricket, Jack Charlton's Match Fishing, Circus, Merlin, A View to a Kill, and Dickie's Diamonds. We'll do this again, sort of thing. Were there any on my list that would have hit your list?
Jack Charlton's Match Fishing. So what about yours off my list?
I think Circus.
And that elusive third place banner. So it's and this is quite funny, really, because it's like the third least shittest.
The third most shit. Well, I don't know.
Third most shittest. What is it?
We have the
logic's
most
broken.
Absolutely.
It's not the most shittest, it's the third least shittest.
The and/or function has collapsed.
My Boolean brain is broken. Or has it? We're doing nerdy jokes. We've reached nerdy joke o'clock. I mean, I've got Boolean humour. Laugh or don't. Anyway, right. So, oh my gosh.
Right. So, Glider Pilot, Brian Bloodaxe, Ian Botham's Test Cricket, Merlin, A View to a Kill, or Dickie's Diamonds.
Goodness me.
Are there any in those six that you'd think don't deserve to be in the bottom three?
They all deserve to be in there. I think it's so difficult that each one has something horrible that I really hated. Whether it's an owl that has a limited flight, pointless waste of a license, a game that has no discerning link to its actual creative game that it's trying to emulate, pointless stupid collect 'em up humour that has no place and doesn't work and is too slow, or a game that involves simulating something that shouldn't have ever been simulated because it's unnecessary. Where do you go with that? It's hard. I think I'd probably take... I don't know. That's so difficult. Do you just go for... I don't know. That's so hard.
I'm going to say A View to a Kill doesn't belong in there. Because as bad as A View to a Kill is, and it is not a great game, it still works and is still... There's some... It's bad.
There's a bit
we know
to
it's
it,
bad.
yeah. But,
so,
yeah.
As brown as Paris looks... that 3D effect isn't that bad, and it's a bit dull, but at least it's so. I don't think A View to a Kill is as bad as those other five.
No, so it's really for me. It's actually it's a toss up really between Glider Pilot or Ian Botham for me at the moment.
Okay.
Dickie's Diamond's bad, but Dickie's Diamond is a kiddies kind of game, and and if we take it in that respect, then maybe kids would probably play it for a bit. I don't know. I certainly wouldn't have liked it, but maybe that's it. Maybe that was its target audience. Ian Botham's Test Cricket fails at every level to engage anyone in the notion of cricket. Glider Pilot fails at any notion of getting enjoyment out of gliding. Brian Bloodaxe, all right, it's the collect 'em up with a bad sense of everything, but there's lots of collect 'em ups in that world, and it's in bad company anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
what about Merlin?
Merlin again. Merlin is just my statement at the time was, if I'm going to play Jetpack, I'm just going to play Jetpack. I'm not going to bother with Merlin. I would have been angry if I'd have paid full price for Merlin now. And so maybe the price has to factor into some of these. And I think for me, as much as I hate Glider Pilot, and I do, Ian Botham's Test Cricket was full price, and it is a rip-off for what it is. So maybe that's the one I would choose to put in there. But it's not just about what I choose. What do you think? Where would you go?
Brian Bloodaxe angered me.
It did.
But it's too much of just like another one of those sort of things. It's Glider Pilot. The thing with Glider Pilot is I think Glider Pilot is more pointless than bad. There's an argument to be made there.
Yeah,
it's not
true.
That it's, if you're going to simulate gliding gliding in a glider, it kind of does that. It's just the most pointless thing to do.
Yeah, yes, that's a good argument, actually.
And so maybe Glider Pilot, like A View to a Kill, is just a bad game, but not offensively bad. It does what it does. And so for me, Glider Pilot is more, pointless and like, than which is how I'm kind of sort of ranking these. So to me, Glider Pilot would not fit in there. I think if we're looking at reasons to put stuff out.
So you're just left with Brian Bloodaxe, Ian Botham's Test Cricket, Merlin and Dickie's Diamonds.
Dickie's Diamonds has stupid mechanics, is not a great game, but at least it does work.
It does achieve what it sets out to do, even if that's stupid.
Yeah, and it has a ridiculous mechanic, but and that angered me some in respect sort of thing. But
just a bit.
I can whatever. I think I'm gonna fall with you. I think Ian Botham's. Don't forget, sort of thing, I didn't put in Tim Loves Cricket. As bad as that was, sort of thing, this was worse. From that perspective, I think Ian Botham's Test Cricket, I think it was an appalling travesty of a cricket sim that doesn't deserve mine or your time. So I think that gives us our bottom three.
That's our three, it does.
To put in the ring and fight it out. So we have two really bad sports sims. We've got Jack Charlton's Match Fishing and Ian Botham's Test Cricket, and we have Circus Circus. Where do you want to start?
I don't know. They're all awful. And I'm now starting to think about the adverts that go with them as well, because that's if we have to look at the whole picture for these. Because people were enticed into buying them. You've got two celebs at the time, both, Jack Charlton, big name in football, or ex-footballer, but name in sporting, definitely, big name. Ian Botham was very big at cricket at the time. So I think I'm going to have to... Yeah, they were. Because of the weight that those celebrities of the time lend those games, I'm going to lean towards one of those two being in the worst. Because I think it's a Mickey take, really, because people trusted, the celebrities to endorse something that would actually have a value to them. Now, I don't think there's a harmful bone in Jack Charlton's body. Now, I don't know much about Ian Botham, but if you go to Jack Charlton's Match Fishing, you can select the rods and you can do all that fishing stuff. You might not like it, and it's slow and it's weird and the controls are weird and all of that, and it isn't a good game, but you can almost fish in it if you choose to do it, albeit really weird. I would argue that Ian Botham's Test Cricket is not a good cricket game, and that's what it sets out to do. And Ian Botham must have known that because he's a cricket player. So the Boolean logic's kicking in. If it's an if-else statement, if Ian Botham... And no, I'm joking. I think the worst game in that out of those three, as much as it's like saying which is the which turd are you going to eat.
And Circus Circus was cheap, wasn't it? It was budget.
Cheap, nasty rubbish and budget. But Ian Botham's was full price. It's a cricket game where you can't really play cricket at all. It makes no sense. And that Ian Botham put his name to. And I think that if for all of those reasons and all the fact that it's just rubbish. I think it's, that's going in my drawer for Sunday best forever.
That's going under the socks and the boxers. And
that is going at the back. But what about you? Is that? Do you think that thought process is valid, or are you along the same lines?
I think you've made a valid case there, which I can get behind. It means I don't have to think too much about the horrors of these. So I'm willing to get on board your Ian Botham's Test Cricket bus as our game for Sunday best. I think that's a nomination, because I do think you're right, actually. As bad as Jack Charlton's Match Fishing is, it's not great, and it is a bit rubbish sort of thing. There is things you can do. If you're going to simulate fishing, then fishing is sitting around a lot of the time doing very little, and that game does that.
Yeah, it does it perfectly.
It does it perfectly. So in that respect, it's an absolute triumph. But it's just not it's not a triumph you want to sort of simulate in your living room with 7 other people. Nope. Circus Circus, I'll cut it some slack in the regards to these other two because it's cheap. It's a bad platformer on every respect. Sprites are terrible and everything like that. But yeah, I think the notion that Ian Beefy Botham was a bit of a beloved character in the 80s, he's a cricketer, he played football for Scunthorpe and all these kind of stuff.
Did he?
He played football. Yeah, he played football for Scunthorpe.
No, I didn't know that. It doesn't make me think any better of him for making this game.
No, but I think in those respects, we looked at Tim Love's Cricket as, as bad as that was, sort of thing. We looked at Graham Gooch's and that was actually pretty decent. This, doesn't do what it's setting out to do. And in that respect, due to that license, due to everything it is, I think I'm going to go with you, yes.
The award for Sunday Best Game goes to
Ian Botham's Test Cricket.
Doesn't it just? Being Botham.
It does. Our runners-up, other games never to take out the Sunday Best draw, Jack Charlton's Match Fishing and Circus, with honourable mentions.
Dishonourable discharges.
Dishonourable mention. To Brian Bloodaxe, Merlin, A View to a Kill, Glider Pilot, and Dickie's Diamonds.
And just one final note there, I would say, is don't feel that list of what we've put in our Sunday Best draw is completely conclusive in any way. Feel free to take any of those games that we nominated and put them in your own Sunday Best draw, because trust me, we're doing you a favour. We played them so you don't have to. Yeah,
that's our motto. It really is. So there you go. The Sunday Best Award, Ian Botham's Test Cricket. Thank you very much for that. Right, so we'll be back in a moment after this short break, when we will be looking at, nice one actually, Best Music. So join us for that. Welcome back. After the horror that was the Sunday Best Draw Award, we're here with something, much better really, sort of thing. We're here for Best Music. And we have a number of nominations for this. We're going to do the same thing. So we're going to list these out, put our three choices in, and see what we will land on. So our nominations for Best Music go to Shadowfire, Cauldron, Clumsy Colling, Action Biker Eats Skips, Roland's Rat Race, Thing on a Spring, Confusion, Summer Games 2, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Monty on the Run, Hypersports, Nodes of Yesod, Wizardry, Winter Games, Scarabaeus, and Crazy Comets. That's our list.
There's the list. Cool.
That's our list.
Some cracking music in there.
Do you want to go first or shall I? What do you want to do?
You go first this time. I've been first for the last few. So
I'm going to put in Crazy Comets.
Good choice.
Crazy Comets, obviously a Hubbard piece. Again, great, solid in-game tune. High score tune is excellent as ever. There's, Hubbard is really, at this point in time, really coming into his own. I'm not up on the technicalities of the Hubbard Player 1 or Hubbard Player 2 or whatever those sort of things are. I don't know these things sort of things. So I just go by what I listen to. But this is a really good example. Again, and we've seen this quite a few times. The game is all right. It's Mad Planets. It's okay. It is what it is sort of thing. It's an okay, competent conversion take on Mad Planets. But that music, once again, is responsible for lifting a slightly above average game into, almost, good, great game territory. And we see this a lot. And so the Crazy Comets tune it's just a really, it's unusual. It's fast paced. It's got a good, good melody. There are, lots of unusual bits to it. It feels, spacey and a bit sci-fi. And it just works once again with that game. And it lifts, it lifts that game up. So for me, Crazy Comets is a bit of a no-brainer, I think.
Good choice. Excellent choice, yeah. I'm going to put my first choice in, and the one I'm going to go to is Hypersports. Hypersports, the opening music when it first starts in that game is extraordinary. It's extraordinary for lots of different reasons. It's even aside from the fact that it's a great version of Chariots of Fire, which is itself is actually quite a brave thing to take on in terms of the Commodore 64. There's a level of attack and maturity to the music on the Commodore 64 version that lends it just as much weight as the original in my book. When that first comes out of the speakers when you play it, it sounds huge. It's massive. I mean, aside from all the other in-game little bits of music and all the rest of it, that main theme is astonishing. It's an achievement. And even if the game was kind of average, the game's pretty good, actually. That music is a real achievement in there. It's Martin Galway at his absolute best, really firing on all cylinders, using the SID chip and all three channels to their maximum, and it is a beautiful thing to listen to, and it never has lost that power for me. So Hypersports is in my first choice.
Mm-hmm. Good call. Good call. I'm going to go with Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Excellent choice.
As my next selection. I think as we noted this in our review when we looked at it actually in the issue or the episode it came out in sort of thing, that this could have gone horribly wrong. This could be horribly wrong as we noted sort of thing. This isn't Frankie Goes to Hollywood. This is Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Trevor Horn. Is it Trevor Horn?
Yes, Trevor Horn.
Yeah, Trevor Horn. Yeah. So this is the legendary sort of producer. This is a massive sound and a huge plethora of tunes to actually go at here, sort of thing, that could have gone horribly wrong, but they didn't. It's a brilliant piece. I always get these confused as well. Is it Matt or Fred Gray? And I always get them confused. It's Fred Gray, isn't it? Yes. It's the word. It's the name Gray. I just in my head sort of thing doesn't always work. So Fred Gray has taken on one of the pop powerhouses at the time and managed to cram it all into 64 along with the game into 64K. I have no idea how he did it. Each tune is it's recognizable, it's enjoyable. There's loads of little musical stabs through it. There's some of the sort of mini game tunes are really nice. They go around the actual main theme sort of thing.
That's Welcome to the Pleasure Dome.
No. Yeah, it's Welcome to the Pleasure Dome. Sorry, yes. Everything about this could have been a bad thing. But the fact that it doesn't, the fact that it works, only helps to make the game so good. But again, this is a brave thing to take on. I think Hypersports is a single tune. This is an almost an album's worth.
Oh, it is good
of stuff. So hats off to make it this quality, this good in 64K, along with the entirety of that game. Astonishing.
Yeah.
And so I think it needs to be recognised, and that's why I'd put it in the list.
Very good. So my second choice is Monty on the Run. Monty on the Run is one of the
us
most...
have to pick it.
Well, absolutely, but it's one of the most accomplished pieces of Commodore 64 music of all time. And there's loads of other music that's as good and works in different ways, but Monty on the Run is so perfect for that game. Even if it wasn't a great piece of music, which it is, it's the composition, its pace, the sounds that they used, the way that it fits into the game, combined with the high score music and with the music when you lose all your lives and all the rest of those things, it's just brilliant. It's one of the first times when there are games that have great sounds, and they're all in this list actually, but that is one of the ones that really makes you sit up and listen, and it's a real benchmark game for the Commodore 64. So for me, Monty Run has to be in the list. It has to be.
No, I'm not going to argue with that. I think it has to be, yeah. Okay, so my last one, I think I would go with, you know what, I'll put Thing on a Spring on.
Thing on a Spring is a good choice, yeah.
It's a good tune. It's a very good tune. It's early Hubbard, but again, another one of those things we mentioned, sort of thing like Crazy Comet, probably like Monty on the Run as well. It's a tune that elevates a game. And again, this has that feeling of springiness. It's hard to describe. But as a game about you being a thing on a spring, the stabs in the music that sort of thing are like a spring, bouncing sort of thing, and it works. So for as much as something like Monty on the Run is probably technically much better, I think Thing on a Spring has there's slight elements to it sort of thing that actually fit the game better sort of thing. So as a score to as a piece of music to accompany a game about a certain thing, this really does work very well, and on its own, it's a pretty decent piece of music sort of thing. Again, this is it's early Hubbard. It's not going to stand up against his best, but I think this is a fun little tune that works very well in the game. And again, as annoying as this game is, and this game is bloody annoying, does kind of make you want to come back to it. Yes. And that's quite the accomplishment to do for a game that is ultimately quite annoying. Yeah. So for those reasons, I'm going to put Thing on a Spring in there.
And I think for my final choice, I'm going to put Shadowfire in there. Shadowfire is another Fred Gray piece of music. It's really jovial and light, really nice choice of sounds in there. Really captures the kind of a feel for that game. Lends itself a lot to it, and it is one that you can go back to and listen to, and it still has that resonating sort of jovial power to it. Great piece of music. So I think it's deserved of being in that place. It's interesting how our top 6 has come to be sort of dominated by one or two people, really. But you know what? This all changes changes in next year, this is going to be a much harder list to pick out from.
God, yeah.
But that said, we are where we are. So Shadowfire for me, because it is a great. It's short, but it's a great piece of music all the same.
I think that's a good 6. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think if I was going to put on Also Ran in there, I'm going to put Wizardry in. I know it's twee and it's kind of in the game bloody annoying at times, but there is something about that opening Wizardry music that I remember thinking when I first loaded it up, and we're going back many years. I remember thinking then, that's a nice piece of music. Ever since then, I kind of thought the same, and everyone I've ever spoken to about it, and I've spoken to hundreds of different people, not randomly, just go up to people and go, have you heard of Wizardry? They go, yo, no, I've not done that. But people who in the retro gaming world, people who I know,
randomly on the street.
If you speak to any of them about all the different music, everyone goes for the same music, generally speaking. There tends to be the same few tunes that everyone kind of likes, same bit of music. But Wizardry seems to be the real, it's a consistent factor in that, and nobody really seems to know why. It's got a really strange history about the music in Wizardry. We haven't got time to go into all that now, but Wizardry is one I would put in there as an Also Ran.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good call. I'm going to stick Roland's Rat Race in.
I thought you might. I was wondering if you might put that in your 3, but yeah, I think I wouldn't have chosen Wizardry, I think I'd have gone for that one as well.
I think there's a great piece of music on the train, which is buried deep within the game, which is actually worth just getting to the train for to listen to, because it's a really good piece of music. However, I think the opening stab of this reminds me of that sort of wow, when it comes in, that's great. The main tune in and of itself sort of thing is one of the most earworm tunes on the C64. I said it in the review sort of thing. I find myself, even before we've gone back to play these sort of thing, it's a tune I will hum. It will just pop into my head and I will hum it. That dun, 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 and I will just and I will just hum it. And it's, it's got nothing to do with Roland's Rat. I think it's just, a rat in the sewers or anything like that. It's just a really catchy earworm, which is not something, because it's a Galway tune. It's not something I normally associate with Galway.
No.
This sort of catchy little hook. And so for me, I think Roland's Rat Race deserves to be in that sort of final 8. I think.
Yes.
I think it's a but for this time period, if it was released a year later, probably not. It would be superseded by many other titles. But what we have here, I think it needs to be in there.
Okay, so we've got our sort of contenders.
We have. So obviously, Wizardry and Roland's Rat Race are also ran. So we've got 6 titles here: Crazy Comets, Hypersports, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Monty on the Run, Thing on the Spring, and Shadowfire. So I would have picked Monty on the Run. So I think that's going to be in our top 3.
That's going to be in the top 3. I would have picked Crazy Comets.
Okay, so that will be in our top 3 as well.
Yeah.
I guess, by process of elimination. Okay, I think we're both under the impression sort of thing that Thing on a Spring and Shadowfire are not going to make that top 3.
No.
So, and I think I would have put Hypersports in.
Yeah, so
if you hadn't have.
So Hypersports then.
Do you think Hypersports is better than Frankie Goes to Hollywood?
I think that's actually quite difficult. I think from a composition point of view, it's better.
Because they're kind of both doing a cover, should we say.
And I think if it's a battle between 2 people doing covers, I think Hypersports is a better version of Chariots of Fire. And don't get me wrong, they're both great. But then Frankie Goes to Hollywood is a better version of the Frankie Goes to Hollywood stuff. Relax is a good loader on that. But I remember that even before you get to Hypersports, you had the Ocean Loader before that as well. So
that's true.
So I think Hypersports for me, just even now I think about that opening barrage, and I loved Frankie Goes to Hollywood when I loaded it. I remember sitting there thinking that is genuinely. I remember where I was. I remember I had the TV on. Because we didn't have my own TV back then, so we had to plug it into the one in the lounge. I remember I borrowed time. I remember exactly the setup, and I remember that loading screen coming up, and I remember hearing it and really being blown away, because I really like Frankie Goes to Hollywood. I still do to this day. I'm a huge fan of Frankie Goes to Hollywood, but I can't get away from the fact that version of Chariots of Fire is mind-blowing. It is just astonishing. And I mean, look at the list. You're already seeing, in terms of the music, the same names of composers starting to already eke the way out. Next year is going to be a nightmare for this, but at the moment, Rob Hubbard, Martin Galway, Fred Gray, they're dominating that list already. And so I think Hypersports is just it's a better version of Chariots of Fire. Frankie Goes to Hollywood is great, but it's not as good as Hypersports' version. No way. It's just so good.
Yes.
No disrespect to Mr. Gray. I love Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Shadowfire too, but I just, sorry.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these are, we love these tunes. So there is nothing about coming behind Hypersports, Monty on the Run, and Crazy Comets is no.
And Crazy
in
Comets as
1985.
the top one, it has to be. It's just astonishing. I mean,
Is that your number one? Crazy Comets?
Absolutely. Crazy Comets, yeah, absolutely.
Because mine's Hypersports.
Ooh, now how do we figure that out?
So are we sort of saying Monty on the Run's going to come third?
Yeah, I think Monty on the Run's definitely third.
Okay. Wow. That's quite the statement, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Monty on the Run, I do.
So do I.
But
So do
I like the sci-fi swooshiness of Crazy Comets. That's an original piece of music as well.
Yeah.
And not forget that Crazy Comets has also got a really good high score music as well.
It has.
It is a powerful piece of music that drives that game. All that whistling, the swooping sounds. It's genuinely brilliant. And Mad Planets doesn't even have that. So I remember loading Crazy Comets just to play. I never really liked Mad Planets as a game, but I'd load Crazy Comets just to listen to that music. I remember recording it on tape because I used to do music compilation tapes with my Spectrum friends. This is no word of a lie, and that was on the one of the first tapes I ever did was Crazy Comets and Monty on the Run, and I remember it to this day. I remember doing the C90 with all this, and he did one back. It was a nightmare listening to that from the Sinclair Spectrum, although there was some interesting stuff on there now and again. But he did, honestly. We used to do like music tapes for each other. That's Rich and Simon who we used to do them for, two friends of ours from a long time ago. But yes, Crazy Comets features in the list. It's hard though because Hypersports is great, but Hypersports isn't original, and that's what's tipped it for me.
Okay. I get all your arguments about Crazy Comets, and I understand it's not an original piece. But my argument for that would be again what we said about Frank as well. This could have been horribly wrong. You take on, Chariots of Fire, Vangelis, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Chariots of Fire theme. You're taking on Vangelis here. One of the great early sort of soundtrack synth composers and the work that he did. And you're taking, a very iconic piece of music, and you are with 3 channels, in your words, equaling that piece of music. And I think, and to my mind, and he said sort of thing. Did Hypersports had the Ocean Loader as well? Did it have the Ocean Loader as well?
Yeah, the Ocean Loader as well. So yeah.
But that moment when Hypersports first boots up and that first just comes in, it's a proper hairs up on your arms moment. Listening to it now, and it was now when I listened to it, and it's for me. Monty on the Run and Crazy Comets are really, really good tunes, but I guess but Hypersports feels like a proper piece of music, and I can't quite say it right.
I actually think I can see where you're coming from, and in fact, I have to say, it's from a sound maturity level. So from the level of the sounds that are used in the composition, so that are equating to what it needs to try and emulate. I think I can see where you're coming from with Hypersports, because Crazy Comets is nice sounds, but they kind of sound like Rob Hubbard's player playing Rob Hubbard sounds, and it's a great tune, Crazy Comets. Hypersports sounds like Vangelis on the Commodore 64. It's making Vangelis type sounds. Now, Vangelis have thousands and thousands of pounds worth of synthesizers at his disposal. Crazy Comets is a great tune, and I think you've swayed me, actually. I think I would actually switch. I like Crazy Comets. I love Monty on the Run. I think Rob Hubbard's a brilliant composer, but at this point, he does better stuff later. Hypersports is actually a very accomplished Vangelis piece, and I think I originally underestimated the fact that, yes, actually, you're right. He took on Vangelis, and he made a brilliant version of that. That is no mean feat. That is brave to do that, and I agree. And he pulled it off, right? The sounds are there. They're big.
It's got that big, like, those amazing harmonies towards the end when you get that.
It's that shimmery sound that he achieves. It's got that Martin Galway shimmery sound. I agree. I think we have to put, because of that and its power, Hypersports, but then we'll have to be number one with Crazy Comets 2 and, for me, and Monty on the Run 3.
Yeah, that's where I land.
No, I agree. I think I agree with that, because you know what, there's better to come from Galway and from Rob Hubbard, and then we've even got the other composers of stepping up their game soon.
Yeah, we haven't even looked at Whittaker and Dalglish.
Dalglish. Let alone we get to the Tim Follin era, because that's when my allegiance because don't get me wrong, I love all these early musicians, but that guy comes along and he starts to do some really clever stuff. So at this stage, though, I think you're right. Actually, you've convinced me. I love Crazy Comets. I love Monty on the Run. Don't get me wrong, but Hypersports is a genuinely astonishing piece of music on the Commodore 64. The version of Chariots of Fire is something to behold, and I would recommend everyone go and find it on YouTube and listen to it.
And the thing with Galway, he will go on to do this again.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
When with a particular game sort of thing, which I think is, I know you're saying like next year might be tricky sort of thing, but I think I know what my number is, that because I think it's possibly my favourite piece of music on the 64. But that's coming next year. But we'll have a re-listen and we'll see if it's still there.
Galway next year, he's got some real doozers in there, because haven't we got in there Green Beret? There'll be Rambo in there as well. There's a lot, and that's just two off the top of my head.
Yeah, Kung Fu's coming, I think.
I'm kind of dreading it, because that is going to be Kung Fu. Yeah, another one. That's again, my gosh, that is a whopper.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Do you know what?
But then we've got stuff like Zoid from Hood and stuff like that.
Zoid isn't my favourite one of his, but there's a whole load of stuff coming in there that that's a debate for another day. Today, I think you're right. I think Hypersports wins best music for me.
Okay.
The winner of the best music award goes to
Hypersports, with runners-up Crazy Comets and Monty on the Run, with special mentions going to Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Thing on a Spring, Shadowfire, Wizardry, and Roland's Rat Race. Good category. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed listening to all those pieces of music. In fact, all those games that were included in there, all great music. They wouldn't have been included if they weren't. So anything you listen to out of that lot, you're going to have a good time. Okay, so that's the end of part 1 of the awards, where we've given you our opinion and the best visuals, best sound, best music, and also the game that you never want to play again and put in your drawer for Sunday best. You can now go and listen to part 2, which is available right now. We've pulled out all the stops, we recorded this and put it all out, and it's out on one day. Go enjoy yourself. Go listen. In part 2, you get the craziest concept, you get the best crapvert, and also the big one, the best game of 1985. We've also going to include the listeners' comments and anybody that's let us know what they thought with the best visuals, best game, best music of 1985 was as well. So go listen to that now and have some fun. Thanks for listening. This is Zapped to the Past Awards. We'll see you probably as you start the next one in a minute. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Zapped to the Past podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of Commodore 64 games, as well as the music, sights, sounds and news from around the 1980s, driven, of course, by the issue of Zzap 64 magazine published at the time. We will be back next week with another podcast, so do please join us. Until then, please head over to zapptothepast.com to sign up to our email list, as well as check out all the links and resources in the show notes. You will also find us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram under Zapped to the Past. The Zapped to the Past podcast is written and produced by Adrian Mills and Graham Raddings and recorded at Flaky Bits 2.0 studio. All opinions expressed are those of the writers, and while we indeed love Zzap 64 magazine, the Zapped to the Past podcast is not affiliated with it in any way. Stay safe and see you next time.